The phone rings at 3 a.m. in a cramped call centre in Mumbai. Rajesh picks up, expecting another easy mark, another vulnerable senior citizen to drain of their life savings. But tonight, he's about to become the hunted instead of the hunter. On the other end of the line, an elderly woman's voice trembles with grief. She introduces herself as Margaret, claiming her beloved husband Harold just passed away, leaving behind something extraordinary in his old wallet. Margaret's voice breaks as she explains how Harold, a tech enthusiast, had invested in something called Bitcoin years ago. She found a piece of paper in his wallet with numbers and letters, worth what she believes is $2 million. Rajesh's eyes light up like he's hit the lottery. $2 million! This could be the score of a lifetime. He signals frantically to his supervisor Vikram, who rushes over to listen in on what could be their biggest payday ever. But Margaret isn't who she appears to be. Behind the elderly voice is Xander, a skilled scambaiter and YouTuber dedicated to fighting cybercrime. His voice modulation software perfectly mimics a grieving widow, and his trap is already set. If you're enjoying this incredible story of digital justice, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think about these scam baiting tactics. Now, let's see how deep this rabbit hole goes. Xander, speaking as Margaret, explains she's not tech-savvy and desperately needs help transferring the Bitcoin to her bank account. She's willing to share a generous portion with whoever helps her through this difficult time. The scammers are practically salivating. Vikram takes over the call, introducing himself as a cryptocurrency specialist who can help Margaret access her late husband's digital fortune. The irony is delicious. Xander masterfully plays the confused grandmother, asking innocent questions that make the thinnest scammers believe they're dealing with the perfect victim. Every "oh dear" and "I don't understand computers" makes them more confident. The scammers explain they need remote access to Margaret's computer to help her. This is their standard operating procedure, but tonight they're walking straight into a digital minefield. Xander agrees to download their remote access software, but what the scammers don't realize is that he's reversed the connection. When they think they're accessing Margaret's computer, they're actually downloading a devastating virus. The moment the scammers execute their remote access, Xander's virus begins its work. It's not just any virus. It's a sophisticated piece of malware designed to completely cripple their operation. Panic erupts in the call center as computer after computer begins shutting down. The virus spreads through their network like wildfire, corrupting files and exposing their entire criminal database. But Xander isn't finished. His virus doesn't just destroy their systems, it harvests their location data, IP, addresses, and personal information. Within minutes, he knows exactly where they are and who they are. Rajesh stares in horror as his personal information appears on his own screen. His home address, his family photos, his bank details, everything is compromised. The hunter has become the hunted. Xander drops the grandmother act and reveals his true identity. His voice, now clear and authoritative, cuts through the chaos as he addresses the panicked scammers directly through their compromised systems. "Gentlemen," Xander's voice echoes through their speakers, "you've been hunting the wrong prey. I have all your information, and I'm about to make your lives very complicated." The threat is clear. Xander has enough evidence to destroy their operation and send them to prison. He gives them an ultimatum: shut down permanently or face the consequences with local authorities. Vikram, desperate to save his operation, contacts the Mumbai police, but when he tries to report the cyber attack, the response is disappointing and predictable. The police officer's response is infuriating. "This sounds like an international matter. Contact the American government. We don't have resources for these types of cases." Xander watches this interaction through the compromised security cameras and feels his frustration boiling over. The system is broken, and these criminals are slipping through the cracks of international jurisdiction. But Xander isn't the type to give up. If the authorities won't deliver justice, he'll create his own. He begins planning something more elaborate, more personal. 6 months later, the same scammers have relocated and resumed their operations, working remotely from different locations. They think they're safe, but Xander has been watching and waiting. Xander creates a new identity, this time as a wealthy businessman looking to invest in cryptocurrency. He reaches out to the same scammers through different channels, knowing their greed will override their caution. The scammers, desperate for big scores after their previous losses, take the bait immediately. They don't recognize Xander's new persona, and their greed blinds them to the familiar patterns. Xander promises them a massive payday if they can help him move money through American contacts. He claims to need people on the ground to handle cash transactions for his business dealings. The scammers eagerly provide their American accomplices information, people who help them launder money and convert gift cards to cash. They're unknowingly giving Xander the keys to their entire network. Xander's plan reaches its climax when he arranges to send payment to the American accomplices, but instead of real money, he sends them elaborate packages filled with Monopoly money. The American accomplices, expecting thousands to win real cash, open their packages to find colourful play money. The humiliation is immediate and devastating to the entire operation's credibility. When the scammers realize they've been played again, the same voice from 6 months ago echoes through their devices. "Did you really think I'd forget about you?" The psychological impact is crushing. These criminals who prey on vulnerable people's trust now understand what it feels like to be completely powerless and manipulated. Xander's message is clear. Every time they try to restart their criminal enterprise, he'll be there, watching and waiting to strike back even harder. The scammers' network begins to collapse as trust breaks down between them. When criminals can't trust each other, their entire operation becomes unsustainable. For our anonymous hero, this victory represents more than just revenge. It's about protecting future victims and showing that scammers aren't untouchable predators. The ripple effects continue as other scam-baiting communities learn from Xander's tactics, creating a network of digital vigilantes fighting back against cybercrime. But this is just one victory in an ongoing war. For every scammer stopped, dozens more are targeting innocent victims right now, and not everyone has a digital guardian angel. Remember, hundreds of these incidents happen daily, but not all victims are saved. Use this story for education and stay vigilant. The best defense against scammers is knowledge and awareness. 3 weeks after the Monopoly money incident, Rajesh sits in his cramped apartment staring at his reflection in his laptop screen. The humiliation burns deeper than any financial loss ever could. His phone buzzes with angry messages from Vikram and the other team members. Their American contacts are furious, threatening to cut all ties after being made fools of with fake money. Meanwhile, Xander monitors their communications through back doors he planted months ago. Every desperate message, every panicked phone call feeds directly into his surveillance network. The psychological warfare is working perfectly. Rajesh's confidence is shattered and he jumps at every notification, wondering if it's another trap from his digital nemesis. Vikram calls an emergency video meeting with the remaining team members. His once commanding presence now shows cracks of desperation and paranoia. "We need to disappear completely," Vikram declares, his voice shaking. "Change everything. New identities, new methods, new locations. This ghost is destroying us." But Arjun, one of the younger scammers, pushes back. "We can't keep running forever. Maybe we should just quit this business entirely, find legitimate work." The suggestion triggers explosive anger from Vikram. "Quit? After everything we've built? One hacker doesn't get to destroy our entire livelihood." Xander watches this internal conflict unfold with grim satisfaction. He's not just disrupting their operations anymore, he's tearing apart their criminal brotherhood from within. The meeting ends with harsh words and broken alliances. Arjun logs off first, followed by 2 others. The criminal network is fracturing exactly as Xander planned. That night, Arjun makes a decision that will change everything. He opens his laptop and begins typing a message to local authorities, ready to expose the entire operation. But before he can hit send, his screen flickers. A familiar voice emerges from his speakers, calm but commanding. It's Xander, and he's been watching. "Arjun?" Xander's voice is surprisingly gentle. "I've been monitoring your conversations. I know you want out. I can help you, but I need something in return." The proposition is simple but dangerous. Xander wants complete information about their remaining American contacts and future plans. In exchange, he'll ensure Arjun's safety and anonymity. Arjun's hands tremble as he considers the offer. Betraying his former colleagues could mean death threats, but continuing this life guarantees eventual destruction. "I have a younger sister," Arjun whispers to his screen. "She's in college, studying to become a teacher. She doesn't know what I do for money." Xander's response carries unexpected empathy. Then do this for her, help me end this cycle, and you can build a legitimate future without looking over your shoulder. The decision tears at Arjun's conscience, but survival instinct wins. He begins uploading files, contact lists, and operational details to Xander's secure server. Each file represents years of criminal activity, hundreds of victims, and millions into stolen money. The evidence is overwhelming and damning. Meanwhile, Vikram and Rajesh are planning their biggest score yet, unaware that their every move is being documented and transmitted to their greatest enemy. They have identified a new target, an elderly widower named Robert who recently lost his wife to cancer. His vulnerability makes him perfect prey for their cruelest tactics. But as they prepare to make contact, Xander is already 3 steps ahead. He's created a protective barrier around Robert, monitoring all incoming calls and emails. The moment Vikram dials Robert's number, Xander intercepts the call. Instead of reaching their intended victim, they hear a recording of their own voices from previous scams. "Gentlemen," Xander's voice cuts through their recorded confessions. "I believe you've heard this song before, but this time the entire world will hear it too." Panic sets in as they realize their conversations are being broadcast live on social media platforms. Their faces, voices, and crimes are being exposed to thousands of viewers. Vikram frantically tries to shut down his devices, but every screen in his apartment displays the same message: justice has many faces, and today it wears yours. The live stream reaches viral status within hours. Comments pour in from previous victims recognizing the voices, sharing their own stories of loss and betrayal. Rajesh watches his criminal career implode in real time. His neighbors, his family, everyone he knows can now see exactly what he's been doing for years. The social pressure becomes unbearable. Rajesh's mother calls, crying, asking how her son became a criminal who steals from grieving families. But Xander isn't finished. The final phase of his plan involves something more permanent than public humiliation. He's building a case that even corrupt officials can't ignore. Using Arjun's insider information, Xander has mapped the entire criminal network, from the call centers in Mumbai to the money laundering operations in America. The evidence package is so comprehensive that it attracts international attention. FBI agents in America begin coordinating with Interpol for a joint operation. Within 72 hours, simultaneous raids occur across multiple countries. The American money mules are arrested first, cutting off the scammers' financial lifeline. Vikram's apartment door explodes inward as Mumbai police, finally motivated by international pressure, execute their warrant. His empire crumbles in minutes. Rajesh, watching the news coverage of the arrests, makes a desperate decision. He grabs his passport and what little money he has left, planning to flee the country. But at the airport, his name triggers an international alert. Security officers surround him before he can board his flight to Bangladesh. As the handcuffs click shut, Rajesh finally understands the true scope of Xander's revenge. This wasn't just about stopping one scam, it was about dismantling an entire criminal ecosystem. 3 months after the arrests, Arjun sits in a small internet cafe in Bangalore, his hands shaking as he applies for legitimate customer service jobs. The weight of his betrayal haunts him, but his sister's proud smile when he told her he quit his old job makes it worthwhile. Meanwhile, Xander receives an encrypted message from an unexpected source. It's from Detective Sarah Chen of the FBI's Cybercrime Division, and her words send chills down his spine about what they discovered during the raids. The message reveals that Vikram's operation was just one tentacle of a massive criminal octopus. The evidence Xander provided has exposed a network spanning 12 countries, with over 50,000 victims and losses exceeding $200 million. But there's a darker revelation. Among the victim files, Xander finds something that makes his blood run cold. His own grandmother's name appears on a list from 2 years ago, before she passed away from the stress of losing her life savings. The personal connection hit Xander like a physical blow. His crusade against scammers wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about avenging his grandmother's final months of poverty and shame. Detective Chen's message continues with an urgent warning. The arrested scammers are already being released on bail due to overcrowded prisons and corrupt officials. They'll be back on the streets within weeks. Vikram emerges from custody with a burning desire for revenge. His reputation is destroyed, his network dismantled, but his hatred for the anonymous hacker who ruined his life burns brighter than ever. Using his remaining contacts, Vikram begins hunting for Xander's real identity. He hires underground hackers, offering his last savings to anyone who can unmask his digital nemesis. The hunt intensifies when one of Vikram's hired hackers discovers a vulnerability in Xander's security system. A single mistake in his encryption could expose everything he's worked to protect. Xander's monitoring systems detect the intrusion attempts, but he realizes he's no longer the hunter. The roles have reversed, and now he's being stalked by people with nothing left to lose. The psychological pressure mounts as Xander discovers surveillance photos of his apartment building posted on dark web forums. His enemies are getting closer to finding him in the real world. In a desperate move, Xander reaches out to Arjun through the encrypted channels. He needs inside information about Vikram's current plans and the identities of the hackers hunting him. Arjun's response is terrifying. Vikram has gone completely off the rails, threatening to hurt innocent people if he can't find Xander directly. The game has escalated beyond digital warfare. The breaking point comes when Xander's elderly neighbour, Mrs. Patterson, receives a threatening phone call meant for him. Vikram's people have the wrong apartment, but they are getting dangerously close. Xander makes a decision that goes against every instinct for self-preservation. He's going to end this war by exposing himself and confronting Vikram directly, but on his own terms. Using his skills one final time, Xander creates an elaborate digital trap. He leaks false information about his location, leading Vikram's hunters to an abandoned warehouse rigged with cameras and recording equipment. The confrontation unfolds exactly as Xander planned. Vikram arrives with 2 hired thugs, expecting to find his tormentor helpless and alone. Instead, they walk into a perfectly orchestrated sting operation. Xander's voice echoes through hidden speakers as the warehouse doors lock automatically. "Welcome, Vikram. I've been waiting for this conversation for a very long time." The tables have turned completely. Vikram and his associates are trapped in a space where every word, every threat, every admission of guilt is being recorded and broadcast live to law enforcement agencies worldwide. Vikram's rage explodes as he screams threats at the cameras, not realizing that his words are being transmitted directly to Detective Chen and her international task force. But Xander has one more revelation that will shatter Vikram's world completely. Through the speakers, he begins reading names and details of Vikram's own family members, showing that the hunter has become the hunted. "Your daughter Priya is studying medicine at Delhi University," Xander's voice continues calmly. "Your mother lives on Rajesh Street. They have no idea what you really do for a living, do they?" The psychological warfare reaches its peak as Vikram realizes that his enemy has the same power over his family that he tried to wield over innocent victims for years. Xander's final ultimatum is simple but devastating. Vikram must confess to every crime, provide information about remaining criminal networks, and surrender peacefully, or his family will learn the truth about his criminal empire. The confession that follows is complete and damning. Vikram, broken and defeated, reveals details about criminal operations across multiple continents, providing law enforcement with their biggest breakthrough in cybercrime history. Within hours, the warehouse is surrounded by police vehicles. Vikram and his associates are arrested on charges that will keep them imprisoned for decades, with no possibility of bail or corruption saving them this time. Detective Chen personally oversees the arrests, finally meeting the anonymous vigilante who provided the evidence that dismantled an international criminal empire. Their conversation remains classified, but the results speak for themselves. 6 months later, Arjun receives his first paycheck from a legitimate customer service job. He sends half the money to his sister and uses the rest to start a small fund for scam victims in his grandmother's memory. The ripple effects of Xander's operation continue spreading across the globe. Scam call centers shut down permanently, knowing that somewhere in the digital shadows, justice is watching and waiting. Xander returns to his normal life, but his work is far from over. Every day brings new reports of scammers targeting vulnerable people, and every day he prepares new traps for those who prey on the innocent. Mrs. Patterson, his elderly neighbour, never learns how close she came to danger. She continues her quiet life, protected by a guardian angel she'll never know exists. The story serves as a reminder that in our connected world, predators and protectors exist in the same digital space. The difference lies in how they choose to use their power. Detective Chen's cybercrime division reports a 30% decrease in international scam operations following the arrests. The message is clear. Criminals are no longer safe in the digital shadows, but for every network dismantled, new ones emerge. The war between scammers and those who fight them continues every day, with innocent people caught in the crossfire. Xander's grandmother's photo sits beside his computer, a constant reminder of why this fight matters. Every scammer stopped means another family spared the pain his grandmother endured. The anonymous hero's identity remains protected, but his impact echoes across the internet. Somewhere tonight, a scammer will think twice before targeting their next victim, knowing that justice might be watching. Remember, hundreds of these incidents happen daily, but not all victims are saved. Use this story for education and stay vigilant. The best defense against scammers is knowledge and awareness. 2 years pass and the digital landscape shifts dramatically. Xander's victory becomes legend in underground forums, inspiring a new generation of scambaiters who study his methods like sacred texts. But success breeds complacency, and Xander doesn't notice the subtle changes in his routine. Someone has been watching him, learning his patterns, waiting for the perfect moment to strike back. The threat comes from an unexpected source. Kavya, Vikram's younger sister and a brilliant computer science graduate, has spent 2 years planning her revenge against the man who destroyed her family. Unlike her brother's crude scamming operation, Kavya possesses legitimate technical skills and a burning desire for vengeance that makes her infinitely more dangerous than any common criminal. Kavya's plan is elegant in its simplicity. She creates a fake victim profile, an elderly man named Theodore, who claims his late wife left behind cryptocurrency worth $3 million. The bait is irresistible, designed specifically to appeal to Xander's protective instincts. Theodore's story mirrors his grandmother's tragedy, making it impossible for the scambaiter to ignore. Xander takes the bait immediately, his emotional connection to the story overriding his usual caution. He reaches out to Theodore, offering help and protection from potential scammers, but Kavya has studied every aspect of Xander's previous operations. She knows his techniques, his psychological triggers, and most importantly, his weaknesses. The first phase of her trap involves gaining Xander's complete trust. Theodore becomes increasingly dependent on his digital guardian angel, sharing personal details that seem innocent but reveal crucial information. Through seemingly casual conversations, Kavya learns about Xander's security protocols, his backup systems, and the location of his primary workstation. Every detail becomes a weapon. 3 weeks into their relationship, Theodore mentions receiving suspicious calls from scammers. He begs Xander for help, not knowing he's walking directly into a carefully constructed ambush. Xander's protective instincts kick into overdrive. He begins monitoring Theodore's communications, installing security software, and setting up the same type of digital traps that made him famous. But every security measure Xander implements gives Kavya deeper access to his systems. His own protective software becomes the pathway for her infiltration. The psychological manipulation reaches its peak when Theodore claims to have been contacted by the same scammer who victimized Xander's grandmother. The personal connection makes Xander reckless. Kavya watches through compromised cameras as Xander's face contorts with rage and determination. She successfully weaponized his greatest strength against him. The trap springs when Theodore asks Xander to help him access his late wife's cryptocurrency wallet. The request seems routine, but it requires Xander to lower his most critical security barriers. As Xander begins the wallet recovery process, Kavya's malware activates, but instead of destroying his systems like he did to her brother, she begins copying everything. The realization hits Xander like a physical blow when his screens display a familiar message, but this time he's on the receiving end. Justice has many faces, and today it wears yours. Kavya's voice emerges from his speakers, cold and precise. Hello, Xander. My name is Kavya Sharma. You destroyed my brother's life. Now I'm going to destroy yours. The extent of her infiltration becomes clear as Kavya demonstrates complete control over his systems. Every file, every contact, every secret operation is now in her hands. But Kavya's revenge goes beyond simple exposure. She begins contacting every scammer Xander has ever targeted, offering them his real identity and location in exchange for a piece of their future profits. The first death threat arrives within hours, then another. Soon Xander's phone buzzes constantly with messages from criminals around the world who want revenge for their ruined operations. Xander realizes he has minutes, maybe hours, before his location is compromised completely. He begins implementing his emergency protocols, but Kavya anticipates every move. The psychological warfare intensifies when Kavya reveals she's been watching him for months. She knows about Mrs. Patterson, his daily routines, even his favourite coffee shop. "You made my brother feel helpless," Caviar's voice taunts through his speakers. "Now you'll understand what it's like to be hunted by someone smarter than you." Xander's hands shake as he types a desperate message to Detective Chen, but Caviar intercepts it before it can be sent. She's thought of everything. The hunter has truly become the hunted. Xander grabs his emergency bag and prepares to abandon everything he's built, knowing that staying means certain death. As he reaches for the door, Xander's phone rings one final time. The caller ID shows his grandmother's old number. Impossible since she's been dead for 3 years. Caviar's voice comes through the phone, but now she's speaking in his grandmother's dialect, using phrases only family members would know. The psychological torture is complete. "Beta," she says in his grandmother's voice, "you couldn't protect me from the scammers. How will you protect yourself?" The words cut deeper than any physical threat, but in his darkest moment, Xander remembers something Caviar couldn't have anticipated. His grandmother taught him that sometimes the only way to win is to sacrifice everything. Instead of running, Xander makes a decision that will either save him or destroy him completely. He's going to turn himself into the ultimate bait. Xander sends his location to every criminal network hunting him, along with a challenge that no criminal can resist. He's offering himself as the ultimate prize. The message is simple but devastating. "I'm the one who destroyed your operations. I'll be at this location for exactly 1 hour. Come and get me." Caviar watches in disbelief as her carefully planned revenge transforms into something she never anticipated. Her victim is taking control of his own destruction. What Caviar doesn't know is that Xander's location isn't random. He's chosen the one place where his enemy's greed will become their downfall. The stage is set for a confrontation that will determine whether justice or revenge ultimately prevails in the digital age. The countdown continues, and the world watches. The building Xander chose isn't just any location. It's the headquarters of Mumbai's Central Crime Investigation Division, where Detective Inspector Arjun Malhotra has been waiting for exactly this moment for 3 years. Detective Malhotra isn't like the corrupt officers who dismissed Vikram's case. He's been building an international cybercrime task force, and Xander's challenge just delivered every major scammer directly to his doorstep. Caviar realizes too late that her revenge has backfired spectacularly. By exposing Xander's location, she's also exposed every criminal network that's now converging on a police headquarters. The first group arrives within 20 minutes. Dmitry Volkov and his Russian cybercrime syndicate, armed and dangerous, expecting to find one helpless hacker. Instead, they walk into a coordinated police operation. Xander watches from Detective Malhotra's office as criminal after criminal falls into the trap. Each arrest represents hundreds of victims who will finally see justice. The Nigerian prince scammers arrive next, followed by the Romanian credit card fraudsters. None of them realize they're walking into the largest international cybercrime bust in history. But Caviar has one final card to play. She contacts the most dangerous criminal of all, Marcus Chen, a human trafficker who uses cybercrime to fund his operations and has nothing left to lose. Marcus doesn't care about police traps or international operations. He's facing life in prison anyway, and eliminating Xander has become a matter of personal pride for the criminal underworld. Detective Malhotra's radio crackles with urgent warnings. This isn't just another arrest anymore. Marcus Chen's arrival has turned a police operation into a potential war zone. Xander realizes his gamble may have gone too far. Innocent police officers are now in danger because of his decision to use himself as bait for the world's most dangerous criminals. The standoff begins when Marcus's convoy surrounds the police building. His voice booms through a megaphone, demanding Xander be handed over in exchange for the officer's safety. Inside the building, Detective Malhotra makes a decision that will define his career. Instead of negotiating with terrorists, he's going to end this war once and for all. Caviar watches the chaos unfold from her apartment, realizing her quest for revenge has created a situation that could result in the innocent deaths. Her brother's imprisonment suddenly seems insignificant. The psychological pressure intensifies when Marcus begins broadcasting live on social media, turning the standoff into a global spectacle. Millions watch as cybercrime warfare spills into the real world. Xander makes a decision that surprises everyone. He walks out of the police building with his hands raised, offering himself to Marcus in exchange for ending the siege peacefully. But Detective Malhotra has anticipated this moment. Hidden snipers, undercover agents, and international backup have turned the entire area into an inescapable trap for Marcus and his associates. The final confrontation happens in seconds. Marcus reaches for his weapon, but before he can draw it, every criminal in his convoy is simultaneously arrested by coordinated international forces. Caviar's phone rings as she watches the arrests on live television. It's Detective Malhotra, and his message is simple but terrifying for someone who just orchestrated an international incident. "Miss Sharma," the detective's voice is calm but authoritative. "We've been monitoring your communications with these criminals. You have exactly 1 hour to surrender yourself voluntarily." The irony is complete. Caviar, who sought to destroy Xander using his own methods, has fallen into the same type of trap that destroyed her brother's criminal empire. Xander stands among the arrested criminals, but instead of satisfaction, he feels only exhaustion. The cycle of revenge and justice has consumed years of his life and nearly cost innocent lives. Detective Malhotra approaches Xander with an offer that could change everything. The International Task Force needs someone with his skills to help victims and prevent future crimes legally. The decision weighs heavily on Xander's mind. He could continue his anonymous war against scammers, or he could work within the system to create lasting change for victims worldwide. Caviar's surrender comes exactly 58 minutes later. She walks into the police station with her head held high, accepting responsibility for her actions, but showing no remorse for defending her family. During her interrogation, Caviar reveals the depth of her technical skills and her genuine love for her imprisoned brother. Her talents could serve justice instead of revenge if she chooses. The global impact of the operation becomes clear within days. Cybercrime rates drop significantly as criminal networks realize that their digital anonymity no longer guarantees safety from justice. Xander accepts Detective Malhotra's offer, but on one condition: his identity remains protected, and he continues helping victims, while working within legal boundaries to dismantle criminal networks. Caviar faces a similar choice during her sentencing hearing. She can serve her full prison term, or she can use her skills to help law enforcement catch other cybercriminals. The rehabilitation program becomes a model for other countries. Former criminals using their skills to protect victims creates a powerful force against international cybercrime networks. Mrs. Patterson never learns how close she came to being caught in a war between digital vigilantes and international criminals. She continues her peaceful life, protected by forces she'll never understand. The story spreads through underground forums and social media, becoming a legend that deters potential scammers while inspiring legitimate cybersecurity professionals worldwide. Arjun, the former scammer turned legitimate worker, reads about the operation in the news. He recognizes some of the arrested criminals and feels grateful for choosing redemption over revenge. Detective Malhotra's International Task Force grows stronger each month, with former criminals, ethical hackers, and law enforcement officers working together to protect innocent victims globally. Xander's grandmother's photo still sits beside his workstation, but now it represents hope instead of revenge. Every scammer caught means another family spared the pain his grandmother endured. The anonymous hero's work continues, but now with legal authority and international support. His digital traps still catch criminals, but they lead to courtrooms instead of vigilante justice. Caviar serves her reduced sentence while contributing to cybercrime prevention programs. Her brother's imprisonment taught her that revenge only creates more victims, never true justice. Remember, hundreds of these incidents happen daily, but not all victims are saved. Use this story for education and stay vigilant. The best defense against scammers is knowledge and awareness. 3 years after the international cybercrime bust, the digital landscape has transformed dramatically. Former criminals now work alongside law enforcement, creating an unprecedented alliance against online predators who target innocent victims worldwide. Xander sits in his new office at the International Cybercrime Task Force headquarters, monitoring communications from potential scammers. His grandmother's photograph remains beside his keyboard, a constant reminder of why this work matters more than revenge. The morning briefing reveals disturbing intelligence. A new scamming network has emerged, more sophisticated than anything they've encountered before. These criminals are specifically targeting families who've lost loved ones to previous scams. Detective Malhotra presents the evidence with grim determination. They are calling themselves the Grief Hunters. They research obituaries, social media posts, and public records to identify families in mourning, then exploit their emotional vulnerability. Caviar, now working as a reformed cybersecurity specialist, recognizes the coding signature in the intercepted communications. Her face goes pale as she realizes who's behind this new operation. "I know this programming style," Kavya whispers, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and anger. "It's Ravi Malhotra, my brother's former partner. He escaped the raids 3 years ago and disappeared." The revelation sends shockwaves through the task force. Ravi Malhotra isn't just another scammer. He's a ghost who's been studying their methods, learning from their successes, and building something far more dangerous. Xander studies Ravi's psychological profile with growing unease. Unlike previous criminals who were motivated by greed, this man is driven by pure hatred for the task force that destroyed his criminal empire. The first victim report arrives within hours. Margaret Thornton, a 73-year-old widow from Ohio, lost her entire retirement savings after being contacted by someone claiming to help recover her late husband's cryptocurrency investments. But Margaret's case reveals something terrifying. The scammers didn't just steal her money, they recorded her emotional breakdown and are using the footage to train other criminals on psychological manipulation techniques. Kavya's hands shake as she reviews the intercepted training materials. He's turned victim suffering into a teaching tool. This isn't just theft anymore, it's systematic psychological torture. The task force realizes they're facing an enemy who understands their methods intimately. Ravi has been watching them for 3 years, learning their patterns, and building countermeasures for every technique they use. Detective Malhotra makes a difficult decision. "We need to go completely dark, no digital communications, no electronic surveillance. If we're going to catch this ghost, we have to become invisible ourselves." Xander suggests something that makes everyone uncomfortable. "We need to use live bait. Someone has to pose as a genuine victim to draw Ravi out of hiding." The volunteer surprises everyone. Mrs. Patterson, Xander's elderly neighbour, steps forward after overhearing their conversation. "I may be old, but I'm not helpless. Let me help catch these monsters." The ethical debate that follows is intense. Using a genuine elderly person as bait violates every protocol, but Mrs. Patterson's authentic reactions could be the key to exposing Ravi's network. Mrs. Patterson's backstory makes her the perfect candidate. Her husband recently passed away, she has limited technical knowledge, and her genuine grief would be impossible for criminals to detect as fake. The preparation is meticulous and heartbreaking. Mrs. Patterson must relive her husband's death repeatedly, creating authentic emotional responses that will convince even the most suspicious criminals. Kavya designs the technical setup, creating monitoring systems that are completely invisible to criminal detection. Every word, every emotion, every manipulation attempt will be recorded as evidence. The first contact comes sooner than expected. Ravi's network has been monitoring obituaries and social media, and Mrs. Patterson's authentic grief posts attract their attention within 48 hours. The voice on the phone is smooth and sympathetic. "Mrs. Patterson, I'm calling about your husband's digital assets. We've discovered he may have left behind cryptocurrency worth significant money." Mrs. Patterson's genuine confusion and emotional vulnerability create the perfect cover. Her authentic reactions convince the scammer that he's found an ideal victim for their most sophisticated theft operation. But Ravi is more cautious than his predecessors. He doesn't rush into the scam, instead spending days building trust and studying Mrs. Patterson's responses for any signs of deception. The psychological pressure on Mrs. Patterson becomes intense. She must maintain her cover while experiencing genuine grief, creating an emotional burden that concerns the entire task force. Xander watches the operation unfold with growing anxiety. His decision to involve Mrs. Patterson could either save countless victims or result in tragedy for someone he cares about deeply. The breakthrough comes when Ravi makes a critical mistake. He mentions details about previous victims that only someone with access to law enforcement files would know, revealing a security breach within the task force itself. The realization hits like a physical blow. Someone within their own organization has been feeding information to Ravi, making every operation compromised from the beginning. Kavya's analysis of the leaked information reveals the scope of the betrayal. Financial records, victim profiles, and operational details have been systematically stolen and sold to criminal networks. Detective Malhotra's investigation uncovers the shocking truth. The mole isn't a corrupt officer, but someone they trusted completely. Someone who had access to everything they've built. The confrontation happens in the same conference room where they've planned operations for 3 years. The betrayer sits among them, unaware that their crimes have finally been discovered. When Detective Malhotra presents the evidence, the room falls silent. The betrayer's face shows no remorse, only cold calculation about their next move. "You destroyed my career prospects," the mole finally speaks, their voice filled with bitter resentment. "I deserved promotion, recognition, but you gave everything to reformed criminals instead of loyal officers." The personal betrayal cuts deeper than any criminal attack. This person had access to Mrs. Patterson's operation, meaning her life has been in danger from someone they trusted completely. But the betrayer has one final revelation that changes everything. Ravi isn't just running a scam network, he's building something bigger, something that will make your previous cases look like child's play. The intelligence they reveal is terrifying. Ravi has been recruiting victims of previous scams, turning them into unwilling accomplices by threatening their families and exploiting their financial desperation. Mrs. Patterson's operation suddenly becomes exponentially more dangerous. She's not just dealing with professional criminals anymore, but with desperate people who have nothing left to lose. The final phase of Ravi's plan becomes clear through intercepted communications. He's not just stealing money, he's building a database of vulnerable people for something far more sinister than financial fraud. The database Ravi has compiled contains over 50,000 profiles of vulnerable individuals across 40 countries. Each entry includes psychological assessments, financial vulnerabilities, and detailed family information that could be weaponized for unimaginable cruelty. Caviar's voice breaks as she reads through these entries. He's not just stealing money anymore, he's cataloguing human suffering and selling it to the highest bidder. Some of these profiles are marked for human trafficking operations. Detective Malhotra realizes they're no longer dealing with cybercrime, but with something approaching crimes against humanity. The scope of Ravi's operation dwarfs anything they've encountered in their combined careers. Mrs. Patterson's communication device crackles with an incoming message from Ravi himself. His voice is different now, colder and more calculating than any scammer they've previously encountered. "Mrs. Patterson," Ravi's voice carries an undertone of menace that wasn't there before. "I've been researching your background more thoroughly. You have such an interesting family history." The implied threat sends ice through Xander's veins. Ravi has somehow discovered Mrs. Patterson's real identity and is now threatening her family members who live across the country. Caviar frantically traces Ravi's communication source, but he's using advanced routing techniques that bounce his signal through dozens of countries, making him virtually untraceable through conventional methods. Mrs. Patterson's training kicks in as she responds with genuine confusion, but her hands shake slightly as she realizes the danger has escalated beyond anything they prepared for. "I'm sorry, dear," Mrs. Patterson says into the phone. "I don't understand what you mean about my family history. I'm just a lonely old woman trying to access my husband's savings." Ravi's laugh is chilling and predatory. "Oh, Mrs. Patterson. We both know that's not entirely true. Your nephew works for the FBI, doesn't he? Quite the coincidence for someone seeking help with cryptocurrency." The task force realizes their operation has been compromised from multiple angles. Not only do they have a mole within their organization, but Ravi has been conducting counter-surveillance for months. Detective Malhotra makes the hardest decision of his career. He signals for the immediate extraction of Mrs. Patterson, prioritizing her safety over the investigation that could save thousands of victims. But Mrs. Patterson sees the signal and shakes her head firmly. Her voice remains steady as she continues the conversation, refusing to abandon the operation when they're so close to exposing Ravi's network. "I don't know what you're talking about," she continues, her voice carrying just the right amount of elderly confusion mixed with growing fear. "Please, I just want to access my husband's money." Ravi's response reveals the true scope of his psychological manipulation. "Mrs. Patterson, I'm going to help you with your husband's cryptocurrency, but first you need to prove you trust me completely." The proof he demands is horrifying. Mrs. Patterson must provide personal information about her family members, including addresses and daily routines, supposedly for security verification purposes. Caviar works frantically to create false information that will satisfy Ravi's demands without actually endangering Mrs. Patterson's family members, but the time pressure is overwhelming. Xander watches Mrs. Patterson navigate the psychological minefield with growing admiration and terror. Her performance is flawless, but one mistake could result in tragedy for multiple innocent families. The conversation takes a darker turn when Ravi begins describing what happens to people who try to deceive him. His words are carefully chosen to sound like warnings, but carry unmistakable threats. "You see, Mrs. Patterson," Ravi's voice drops to a whisper, "I've dealt with people who weren't entirely honest with me before. They learned very quickly that deception has consequences." Mrs. Patterson's response is a masterpiece of acting. She allows genuine fear to creep into her voice while maintaining the confused grandmother persona that has kept her alive this long. But Ravi has one final test that could expose everything. He demands that Mrs. Patterson video call him immediately, claiming he needs to verify her identity before proceeding with the cryptocurrency transfer. The video call request creates an impossible situation. Mrs. Patterson's face would be recorded and analysed, potentially exposing not just her identity but the entire task force operation. Kavya suggests using deepfake technology to create a false video feed, but the time constraints and technical requirements make it nearly impossible to implement safely. Mrs. Patterson makes a decision that surprises everyone. She accepts the video call, but positions herself strategically to use lighting and camera angles that obscure her features while appearing cooperative. The video call begins with Ravi's face appearing on screen for the first time. His appearance is younger than expected, but his eyes carry the cold calculation of someone capable of unimaginable cruelty. "There you are, Mrs. Patterson," Ravi says. With false warmth, "I can see you're exactly as I imagined. A sweet grandmother who just needs help with technology." But something in Ravi's expression changes as he studies Mrs. Patterson's video feed more carefully. His eyes narrow with suspicion that sends chills through the monitoring team. The tension becomes unbearable as Ravi asks Mrs. Patterson to move closer to the camera and adjust her lighting. Each request brings them closer to complete exposure of the operation. Mrs. Patterson's quick thinking saves the operation. She claims her eyesight is poor and she's having trouble with the technology, buying precious time while maintaining her cover story. Ravi's patience begins wearing thin, but his greed ultimately overrides his suspicion. The promise of accessing $2 million in cryptocurrency proves too tempting to abandon over minor doubts. "Very well, Mrs. Patterson," Ravi finally says. "Let's proceed with accessing your husband's cryptocurrency wallet. I'll need you to download some software that will help me assist you remotely." The software download request is exactly what the task force has been waiting for. This is their chance to turn the tables and deliver the virus that will expose Ravi's entire network. But as Mrs. Patterson prepares to download the malicious software, alarms begin sounding throughout the task force headquarters. Something has gone terribly wrong with their carefully planned operation. Kavya's screens show devastating news. Ravi's software isn't just remote access malware, it's a sophisticated counter-virus designed specifically to destroy law enforcement computer systems and expose their identities. The realization hits like a physical blow. Ravi has been planning this confrontation for months, using Mrs. Patterson's operation to draw the task force into a trap that could destroy everything they've built and endanger every agent involved. Detective Malhotra's voice cuts through the chaos with military precision. "Abort the download immediately! Everyone disconnect from the network now!" But it's too late. Mrs. Patterson's finger has already clicked the download button, and Ravi's counter-virus begins spreading through their systems like digital wildfire. Kavya watches helplessly as her carefully constructed security barriers crumble in real time. "He's not just attacking our computers," she screams over the alarms. "He's downloading our entire database of victims, agents, and ongoing operations." Xander's grandmother's photograph seems to mock him from beside his dying computer screen. 3 years of work, thousands of saved victims, and countless hours of dedication are being erased by someone who learned from their own methods. Mrs. Patterson's voice trembles as she realizes the magnitude of what's happening. "I'm so sorry," she whispers to the team. "I've destroyed everything you've built." Her genuine anguish cuts deeper than any criminal threat they've faced. Ravi's laughter echoes through Mrs. Patterson's speakers as his virus completes its devastating work. "Did you really think I wouldn't recognize the famous scambait's techniques? I've been studying you for 3 years, waiting for this moment." The scope of the breach becomes clear as Kavya's damage assessment reveals the horrifying truth. "He has everything," she reports with a broken voice. "Every victim we've helped, every agent's identity, every safe house location." Detective Malhotra's phone begins ringing with urgent calls from international partners. Within minutes, safe houses across 4 continents are being evacuated, as their locations have been compromised and sold to criminal networks. But Ravi isn't finished with his psychological warfare. His voice turns cold and menacing as he addresses the entire team through their compromised speakers. "You cost me my partners, my reputation, and my freedom. Now I'm going to cost you everything." The first death threat arrives within the hour. Agent Sarah Chen in Los Angeles receives a package containing photos of her children's school and a note promising they'll be the first to pay for their mother's interference with criminal operations. Xander's personal information appears on dark web forums with a bounty that makes him the most wanted target in cybercriminal history. His address, his daily routines, even his favourite coffee shop are listed with deadly precision. Mrs. Patterson's family members begin receiving calls from unknown numbers. Her grandson in Seattle, her daughter in Miami, her elderly sister in Boston, all suddenly thrust into danger because of her brave decision to help catch criminals. Caviar's analysis reveals Ravi's ultimate plan, and it's more terrifying than anyone imagined. "He's not just exposing us," she whispers. "He's auctioning our identities to every criminal network we've ever damaged." The betrayer who sold them out sits in custody, watching news coverage of the disaster with obvious satisfaction. "I told you. He was building something bigger," they taunt through the cell bars, "and you walked right into it." Detective Malhotra faces the hardest decision of his career. He can either shut down the entire task force to protect his agents, or continue the fight knowing that innocent people will die because of their work. Xander's apartment building is evacuated after a bomb threat, but he refuses to leave. "If I run now," he tells Mrs. Patterson over a secure line, "every victim we've helped will be defenseless against what's coming." The psychological pressure reaches its breaking point when Ravi begins broadcasting live footage of the task force headquarters, showing the world exactly where their supposed protectors work and live. Mrs. Patterson makes a decision that shocks everyone. She calls Ravi directly, bypassing all security protocols, and offers herself as a hostage in exchange for ending his war against the task force. "You want revenge?" Mrs. Patterson's voice carries surprising strength as she addresses Ravi directly. "Then take it out on me. I'm the one who volunteered for this operation. Leave these good people alone." Ravi's response reveals the depth of his cruelty. "Oh, Mrs. Patterson, you misunderstand completely. I don't want just one life. I want to watch your entire organization crumble while knowing they failed to protect anyone." But Mrs. Patterson has one final card to play, something she's kept hidden from everyone, including the task force. Her late husband wasn't just a retired teacher, he was a former CIA operative with connections that still exist. The phone call Mrs. Patterson makes changes everything. Within minutes, satellite surveillance begins tracking Ravi's location, while international intelligence agencies mobilize resources that dwarf anything the task force possessed. Ravi's confidence begins cracking as his own security systems detect the incoming surveillance. "What did you do?" he screams at Miss Patterson, realizing he's triggered something far beyond local law enforcement. "My husband taught me that some fights require different weapons," Mrs. Patterson replies calmly. "And you just declared war on people who have access to all of them." The final confrontation begins as international intelligence agencies surround Ravi's location, but he has one last desperate move that could result in massive civilian casualties if not handled perfectly. Caviar's voice breaks through the tension with urgent intelligence. He's rigged the building with explosives connected to a dead man's switch. If his heart stops, or if he's captured, the entire city block goes up. Xander realizes there's only one way to end this, without massive loss of life. He has to do what he's never done before, meet his enemy face to face and convince him to surrender peacefully. The walk into that building represents everything Xander has fought against for 3 years. He's voluntarily placing himself at the mercy of someone who has every reason to want him dead. Mrs. Patterson watches from the command vehicle, her husband's CIA contacts coordinating the most delicate hostage negotiation in recent history. One wrong word could trigger an explosion that kills thousands. The door closes behind Xander as he enters Ravi's lair, knowing that his next conversation will determine whether justice or revenge ultimately wins in their 3-year war. Face to face at last, the two men who have defined each other's lives for 3 years stand in a room wired with enough explosives to level a city block. "You came," Ravi says with genuine surprise. "I honestly didn't think you had the courage to face me without your digital shields and anonymous protection." Xander's response carries the weight of every victim they've both affected. "This ends here," One way or another, too many innocent people have suffered because of our war. The negotiation that follows will determine not just their fates, but the future of cybercrime fighting worldwide. Outside, Mrs. Patterson prays for the man who risked everything to protect people like her. As their conversation continues, both men begin to understand that they're more alike than different. Both lost family to criminals, both chose to fight back, but their methods led them to opposite sides of justice. The resolution comes not through violence or threats, but through the simple recognition that their war has created more victims than it saved. Sometimes the greatest victory is knowing when to stop fighting. Remember, hundreds of these incidents happen daily, but not all victims are saved. Use this story for education and stay vigilant. The best defense against scammers is knowledge and awareness. Ravi's finger hovers over the detonation switch as sweat beads on his forehead. You know what's funny, Xander? We both started this because someone we loved got hurt by criminals. The only difference is you chose to become a hero and I chose to become the monster. Xander takes a careful step forward, his voice steady despite the deadly situation. It's not too late to choose differently. Your sister Kavya is working with us now, helping victims instead of creating them. She found a better way to honor your family. The mention of Kavya working with law enforcement hits Ravi like a physical blow. His eyes widen with disbelief and betrayal as he realizes his own sister has joined the people he considers his enemies. She betrayed me too? Ravi's voice cracks with genuine pain. Everyone I trusted, everyone I fought for, they all chose your side in the end. Maybe I really am the monster in this story. Outside, Mrs. Patterson watches the thermal imaging display showing both men's vital signs. Her husband's CIA contacts whisper urgent updates as the negotiation reaches its most critical moment. Xander sees the opening and takes it. You're not a monster, Ravi. You're someone who got lost in pain and anger. But right now, you can choose to save thousands of innocent people instead of destroying them. The silence stretches for what feels like hours but lasts only seconds. Ravi stares at the detonator in his hand, then at Xander, then at the computer screens showing all the victims his network has created. If I surrender, Ravi finally speaks, his voice barely above a whisper. What happens to all the people who work for me? The ones I forced into this life because they had no other choice? Xander's response surprises even himself with its compassion. We help them, just like we helped Kavya. The task force has rehabilitation programs for people who are forced into cybercrime. They get second chances, not prison sentences. Ravi's hand begins to shake as the weight of 3 years of hatred and revenge starts to crumble. I've done terrible things, Xander. I've hurt innocent people, destroyed families, caused suffering I can never undo. So have I, Xander admits quietly. I've made mistakes, put people in danger, let my anger drive me to do things I regret. But we can choose to do better starting right now. The detonator falls from Ravi's hand, clattering harmlessly to the floor as he collapses into a chair. I'm so tired of being angry all the time. I just want it to stop. Xander carefully picks up the detonator and disarms the explosives using instructions relayed through his earpiece from the bomb disposal team outside. The immediate threat is over, but the emotional healing has just begun. Mrs. Patterson's voice comes through Xander's earpiece, filled with relief and pride. You did it, dear. You saved everyone without firing a shot or destroying a life. Your grandmother would be so proud. As law enforcement enters the building peacefully, Ravi looks up at Xander with something resembling gratitude. Will you tell Kavya that I'm sorry, that I finally understand what she was trying to show me? The aftermath reveals the true scope of what they've accomplished. Ravi's database contains evidence of criminal networks spanning 40 countries, information that will save thousands of future victims from financial and emotional devastation. Kavya meets her brother in custody for the first time in 3 years. Their conversation is private, but the tears on both their faces tell the story of forgiveness and redemption that words cannot capture. Detective Malhotra addresses the International Task Force with news that will reshape cybercrime fighting forever. We're not just catching criminals anymore, we're breaking the cycle that creates them in the first place. Mrs. Patterson returns to her quiet life, but now she volunteers with victim support groups, helping other elderly people recognize and avoid scammer tactics. Her courage has inspired a movement. Xander continues his work, but now with official backing and legal authority. His anonymous YouTube channel has become a training resource for law enforcement agencies worldwide, teaching ethical scam baiting techniques. The betrayer who sold out the task force faces justice in court, but their testimony helps expose corruption within law enforcement agencies, leading to reforms that strengthen victim protection programs. Arjun, the former scammer who chose redemption, now runs a legitimate tech company that employs other reformed cybercriminals. His sister graduated medical school and works in a clinic he helped fund. The ripple effects continue spreading across the globe. Scam call centers shut down permanently as word spreads that victims now have powerful protectors who fight back with both compassion and justice. Ravi serves his sentence while working with international law enforcement to dismantle the criminal networks he once led. His cooperation saves thousands of victims and helps prosecute hundreds of criminals. The database of 50,000 vulnerable profiles is transformed into a protection network. Instead of targeting these people, law enforcement now monitors their communications to prevent victimization. Mrs. Patterson's husband's CIA connections prove invaluable in establishing international cooperation protocols that make it impossible for cybercriminals to hide behind jurisdictional boundaries. Xander's grandmother's photograph still sits beside his workstation, but now it's surrounded by thank you letters from victims who were saved by the programs her memory inspired. The psychological warfare tactics once used by criminals are now taught to law enforcement as defensive measures, helping officers recognize and counter manipulation attempts during investigations. Kavia's technical skills prove instrumental in developing new security protocols that protect vulnerable populations while preserving their privacy and dignity during the protection process. The international task force expands to include victim advocates, reformed criminals, ethical hackers, and traditional law enforcement, creating a comprehensive approach to cybercrime prevention. Detective Malhotra receives commendations from 12 countries for his innovative approach to cybercrime fighting, but he credits the success to everyone who chose redemption over revenge. The story becomes a case study in criminal justice schools worldwide, teaching future law enforcement officers that rehabilitation and prevention are more effective than punishment alone. Mrs. Patterson's neighborhood becomes a model for community-based scam prevention, with residents looking out for each other and sharing information about suspicious contacts and potential threats. The Monopoly money incident becomes legendary in scambaiting communities, inspiring creative, non-violent approaches to disrupting criminal operations while gathering evidence for prosecution. Xander's anonymous identity remains protected, but his impact echoes through every successful operation that saves victims from financial and emotional devastation caused by cybercriminals. The cycle of revenge that drove both Xander and Ravi for 3 years transforms into a cycle of healing, with former enemies working together to prevent others from experiencing their pain. Remember, hundreds of these incidents happen daily, but not all victims are saved. Scammers continue targeting vulnerable people every single day, using increasingly sophisticated psychological manipulation techniques to steal money and destroy lives. The elderly remain the primary targets because scammers exploit their trusting nature, limited technical knowledge, and emotional vulnerability during times of grief, illness, or financial stress. But now you know the warning signs. Unexpected calls about cryptocurrency, requests for remote computer access, pressure to act quickly, and appeals to help with urgent financial matters are all red flags. If someone contacts you or your elderly loved ones claiming to help with digital assets, cryptocurrency, or urgent financial matters, hang up immediately and verify independently through official channels. Share this story with elderly family members and friends who need to understand how sophisticated these criminals have become. Knowledge and awareness are the best defenses against psychological manipulation. If this video helped you stay safe from scammers, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content that protects you and your family. Share this story with elderly loved ones who need to see it.